The state of Georgia has launched one of the largest public sector IT transformations in the world. In year 2 of the 10-year process, the state is on its way to better network performance, improved security, and greater failover capability. For help, the state turned to the private sector, working with IBM and AT&T. AT&T provides managed network services and is transforming the state's aging IT infrastructure into a more reliable network.
The reason we went down the road of privatization, there were two main drivers. The first was that the state was carrying too much risk. As a large enterprise operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, serving 9 million Georgians, we did not have the processes in place to manage the risk from poorly managed infrastructure and poorly managed network. So we needed to make that change. The second driver was that technology is not really a core competency of government. We don't invest in it. It's hard for us to keep pace with the marketplace. And we said, if we're going to do this in a timely fashion, if we're going to manage the risk in a manner that is commensurate with the size of organization that we need to look to the private sector.
The network transformation affects 70,000 state employees and 1,400 state and local government offices. AT&T's work on the project is valued at $346 million over 5 years. AT&T started by improving the state's network infrastructure.
AT&T is investing over $100 million in infrastructure upgrades, really to get the state's servers, routers, switches, firewalls up to kind of standards and up to code so that we could start to migrate the state's 13 data centers down to a single data center as well as a disaster recovery facility in Boulder, Colorado.
AT&T is helping the Georgia Technology Authority to consolidate technologies across state agencies. The enterprise-wide approach brings significant cost savings, efficiencies, and security improvements. AT&T is helping the state double its network capacity, while it also manages the wide area network, the local area network, and the data center.
They come in and install their tools, they manage all the routers, they manage all the switches, and they set up monitoring through one of their command centers that's in the AT&T infrastructure. They set up alerts and they monitor traffic health of the system on a 24/7 basis.
What we're really doing underneath Managed Network Services is really all of the voice, data, and video services that the state uses AT&T to manage in their environment. But we also provide the whole security wrapper around that and the operational wrappers around those services so that we can provide a good end-to-end service to each of the state agencies.
I think what the citizens want is they want service. They want government to work. And I don't think they necessarily care how it works. Now, you always get into the dynamics of the politics. Any decision that's made in government can be turned into a political issue. That has not been a huge barrier for us because the business drivers behind the decision are so clear. But I think the citizens really want service. And we spend a lot of our time, or have spent a lot of our time and resources, just trying to keep up and just trying to fight the fire of the day. We want to break that model. We want to get into a model where we're using technology to deliver services, where agencies can focus on their core competencies and their constituents and be able to use technology to serve them better than they can today.
Privatization of the state's network gives Georgia access to technology it wouldn't have on its own.
By moving down the path we are moving, we've brought on board a provider whose job it is to keep pace with changing technology, who is current with how to secure a network, who can help us with items such as redundancy and failover, which takes those responsibilities out of our hands. We still are accountable for that, but the implementation of those solutions is not so much a burden on us as it is on the service provider. And then ultimately we can then focus on the business of government rather than on routers and servers and securing networks and ensuring that incidents are responded to in an appropriate way.
The things that AT&T brings to the table is really the expertise on building very complex networks. What we're doing here is really building out the infrastructure that's going to allow them to support multiple agencies. And if you think of state agencies, they actually operate as individual businesses almost. So by virtualizing a lot of the infrastructure, which can be very complex, it allows us to consolidate a lot of the environment, but it also allows us to maintain separation of each of these individual agencies and businesses.
At the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, or OPB, the transformation has already occurred. Budget analysts analysts watch streaming video of legislative sessions from their desks, where they can also do other work. The legacy network had faltered to the point where not one analyst could view the meetings.
We did dramatic improvement after AT&T came in and transformed the environment. I walked around one day after we had gone through the final steps of the transformation, and indeed I had a head count of approaching 40 folks that were simultaneously streaming various committee meetings and sessions.
Prior to the transformation, the network couldn't support the state's video streaming needs.
We were seeing benchmarking at 700K, 600K, and at one point we saw benchmarks that were essentially 4 times modem speed. After the transformation, using these same tools, we routinely see 12, 14, 16 meg data throughput, which is a dramatic improvement.
Better network performance is due in part to AT&T's proactive network management.
With the ability to monitor and proactively manage the wide area network devices that are in stream, AT&T has the ability to spot trouble a lot of times in off hours. And a lot of times they resolve those issues in off hours so that users never actually see the interruption in connectivity. That's extremely valuable.
By working with AT&T, the state has redundant failover capability for the first time. That's just one of the many reasons why the state went to the private sector.
We're no longer looking to buy bits and bytes. We're no longer looking to buy routers and switches. We want a service, and embedded in that service is the ability to stay current with evolving technology. So, as a government, we're moving away from buying things and into buying services. And that to us is a real sea change in how a government should approach technology.
Like other states, Georgia is dealing with smaller budgets. The network transformation is helping tremendously, and it will continue to do so for years to come.
We are asked to do more with less resources. That's when technology really needs to step up and facilitate getting the job done. In the case of the old legacy network, it was not facilitating, it was an impediment to us being as effective as we could be. After the AT&T transformation, it really has benefited us tremendously.
I think the concept makes sense no matter who you're talking to. Obviously, each state's going to have their own set of circumstances. Employee bases, are they unionized or not? The politics of a state would factor into how privatization is perceived. But the general notion of who is best suited to keep pace with changing trends and technology, that is clear. And the private sector clearly has a leg up on government in terms of being able to stay current, because they're in the business of serving customers who are demanding technology, and they have to keep pace. So I think the concept from that regard absolutely would apply to any government in terms of looking somewhere to help solve a problem.